and I've been working in the Middle East for well over 30 years. So this is just a rapid assessment of where we're at, and one of the reasons for doing the project in the first place was obviously to discover archaeological sites, as we do as aerial archaeologists. And one thing that has struck me very much over the last 30 years has been the increase in the damage and destruction to archaeological sites across the whole of the Middle East. So this is just a very quick and personal summary of where I think we are and where we may go in the future. And if you don't know this book, I thoroughly recommend this, The Destruction of Memory by Robert Bewley, his second edition, because it needed to include what was happening in Syria at the time, way back in 2015. And one of the questions we're often asked is, why do we focus on the heritage when what's important are people and their lives? And just as we know from what's happening in Gaza at the moment, just the access to water and food. But for me, it is also important that the heritage is part of our identity, and it helps us understand where we've come from and who we are. So I thoroughly recommend the book, and there's also a film, destructionofmemoryfilm.com, well worth a look, and it just delves into why it is we are where we are in terms of protecting the heritage and why we feel it's important. Another important aspect of what we do and how we do it is obviously the historic air photographs. This is one from Jordan here, taken by the RAF on the 22nd of November 1926, and it shows the amazing city of Jerash. Now it looks very, very different to this, and if we didn't have a baseline, and that's why it's important to keep an archive and maintain an archive, we wouldn't be able to compare how much change there is and convince the non-specialists and the politicians that we need to do something about it. We're very lucky in the Middle East to have had the pioneers, people like Antoine Poidevard, this taken of Palmyra in 1932, in his volume La Trace de Rome. Again, if you don't know it, do have a look at it. It's an amazing survey of archaeological sites across the northern part of what we now refer to as the Levant. Another one here, Flights Over the Ancient Cities of Iran by Eric Schmidt of the Chicago Oriental Institute, as it used to be called. And again, stunning sites in Iran. And there isn't time here to go into the detail, but this is a site called Takti Suleiman, luckily now in much the same condition, which is also very good. More recently, the pioneering work of Derek Riley, and I'm just about to start a project digitising his imagery from Israel that he undertook in 1990 to 92. And his plan was to publish a book, but sadly Derek died in 93. But he took a series of stunning photographs, which are now archived in the Palestine Exploration Fund, but require digitisation, and hopefully either an article or a book will come out of it, looking at particularly the Roman archaeology of Israel. Now again, just to repeat what I've said many times before, we started through the good offices of Professor David Kennedy the Aerial Archaeology in Jordan project in 1997. We expected it to be a project of 2 or 3 years, and it's still going on to this day. Published the book Ancient Jordan from the Air to help promote the wide and deep archaeology that there is, everything from 7th, 8th, 9th millennium BC right up to the 20th century. Many major discoveries, and as always, you get very excited when you record something like this that you've never seen before. But then when you zoom out and see this, which is the bulldozer track across the basalt lava, and the bulldozer driver obviously realising he couldn't go right over the top but had to go round, and that's for oil prospection, and a massive impact on the landscape. So it's very important that these sites are recorded, because the threats are only getting bigger and more destructive. Another example here of a caravanserai, probably an Islamic one, reservoir here, one of 3 all three have now been damaged. There isn't time now to go into that. And this was taken in 1998, and then we happened to be passing the next year in 1999, and there you can see the same reservoir, but caravanserai completely bulldozed away for an olive plantation in the south of Jordan. And this is happening day by day, just slowly, quietly. So it's really important that through whatever means we're recording the destruction, because although these are protected archaeological sites, it's happening just because there isn't the resources to manage and cope with trying to stop this happening. Another example here of a site called Rujum al-Faradiyah, mentioned and highlighted in the book by David Kennedy and Derek Riley in 1990, Rome's Desert Frontier. And one of the problems with archaeological discoveries and letting people know there are sites there, they think that, particularly in Jordan, they think that wherever there's archaeology, there's gold. And this is the site here on the right, but on the left you can see the satellite image of about 5 or 10 years ago, where the site is completely bulldozed. And the road that you can see running past it is the beautifully named Via Nova Traiana, Trajan's Road, essentially the eastern frontier of the Roman Empire in the 1st century CE. Now, there's another area which has been drawn to my attention right from the very beginning. It's the area around the city of Azraq, and this is the landscape from Google Earth around about 2010. But it's been under enormous pressure from expansion, not just the massive air base, but it's also a very important route to Iraq. And the pressure on this landscape is enormous. The problem is it is stacked full of archaeology, and very little of it has been recorded. And I've been trying to do more and more aerial survey in the area, but was thwarted last year because of the activities at the airbase. But we'll keep trying on doing it. And here's an example of just how destructive it is, an expansion of infrastructure, whether it's a field or for roads or whatever. It's not like in lots of Europe and everywhere else where if you plough something up, there's still something there. Here, the bulldozer just destroys it completely. And we've been monitoring this site, Amra Pendant 1, one of literally hundreds of these burial sites. Here it is in 2009 in perfect condition. And here it is again in 2016, where because of the building of the Azraq bypass, they decided that they obviously needed a bit more hardcore. The tail of it's damaged here. If you look at the satellite imagery now, there's another damage to it here. A perfect rescue archaeology project, but no one has ever dug it or whatever. Probably a Bronze Age, maybe late Neolithic, but again, many opportunities are being missed because there's just so many of these things happening all the time. And here's another example, again in the Azraq area. It's heartbreaking to see it, but you know, these are sites that go back to the 6th millennium BCE and just being bulldozed away almost on a daily basis. Luckily, we've recorded most of these sites one way or another, and as you can see from this website, if you don't know the Aerial Photographic Archive for the Archaeology in the Middle East, over 180,000 images recorded for posterity. So hopefully there is a legacy of sites that have been recorded that have now gone, so that future scholars are able at least to study them. The project too, we've expanded to Oman, been there a couple of times, 2 seasons in the air and 1 season on the ground, hoping to get back there soon, if only to do some training courses and workshops, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end. So we're expanded into the Arabian Peninsula in terms of Oman, and then through a team set up through Perth, the aerial, and now Sydney, the aerial archaeology in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Al Ula in the north, and then just slightly further south in Khaybar. 2 amazing oases, and there's a big project to regenerate the areas, if you like, through tourism. And as we know, tourism brings with it lots of benefits, but also lots of infrastructure. And so there is also massive change in this landscape. Lucky enough to be able to fly in their helicopters from time to time, making amazing discoveries. And Hugh Thomas and his team are looking at these beautifully named mustatils, which just means rectangle in Arabic. But these, again, are 6th, 7th millennium BC ritual sites, burials in here of horn cores and other stuff. But again, what we don't know is why have they got these lines here. We've walked over them many times and find very little at all. So there's plenty more to discover, but also we need to protect them for future generations. And then this is the Oasis of Khaybar. Time doesn't allow for any great detail of it, but do look up the Battle of Khaybar 628. Another, perhaps, if not the first, but one of the very early battles between Muslims and Jews. So it's been going on a very, very long time. Now, in my abstract, I said we would look at mitigation strategies and the future plans for further aerial monitoring. Obviously, what's transformed since we first started our project is the availability of satellite imagery. And in 2015, we were able to set up the Endangered Archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa project, fortunately still going on. And I'll just run through these elements, if you like, or the reasons why there is just so much destruction. And in no particular order, but agriculture, conflict, construction, looting. And for this slide, we put in natural erosion, but now we would say that's climate change. And probably I would say climate change is perhaps the most threatening and yet undervalued agent of destruction. And I think as archaeologists we need to be doing far more than we are already in terms of trying to understand the impact of climate change. And the EMINA project is at the forefront of trying to do this. And those are just sort of a bit more detail of what the causes are. The EMINA project in a decade has recorded very nearly 350,000, as you can see here, 346,305 records. Now, as we know, and we can debate for a long time, what is a record, what is a site? But, and this is everything from Mauritania in the west to Iran in the east. So do have a look at their website and you can see just how important this work is. And then a couple of examples from recent work they've been doing. This is on caravanserais. Caravanserai is very important in the Middle East because it's an area of massive movement of people and populations. And if you don't know what a caravanserai is, I was trying to think of what's the best analogy, but think of a chain of hotels, whether it might be Travelodge or whatever else. It's places people stay. Here's a site in 2014, and here, yes, here it is in 2021. Again, not in perfect condition. Sometimes the destruction takes a number of years, but clearly this is a place that should be monitored and a perfect opportunity for some more work and research. And then the work of Michael Fradley and others in the team, this is looking at heritage loss in the Jordan Valley, and a really good example. He got funding for this to look at again, a site, probably another caravanserai, and this is from the Australian War Memorial collection, digitized through this project. And then so this is from, as the caption says, August the 5th, 1918, and here we are, December the 17th, 2019, destroyed through military activity in the West Bank. And then another one, and this is a really good piece of work, looking at the city of Samarra in Iraq, a World Heritage Site. And as the caption says, it was a short-lived capital of the Abbasid Caliphate on the River Tigris. Only lasted 60 years, but phenomenal remains that have been fairly well recorded, 78 miles north of Baghdad. So here's Baghdad and here's Samarra. And the nature of the site, when you see this early photography, and this I believe, this area here was to do with camel racing or horse racing. Fortunately, that's still there, but you can see the before and after here of just how much has changed. 50% of archaeological features at the World Heritage Site destroyed, and now recorded through the work of the Amina project. And so it's very depressing, but also very important work that's being done. And here's just a quick summary of the green shows what in good condition, and then this showing you what's been destroyed in a sort of deep magenta or whatever else. And these are the agents of destruction here: agriculture, building, roads, and that's the story right across the Middle East and North Africa. And then, although I can't do the animation on this, but if you go onto the Amina website and have a look, this is the before the Hamas attack in terms of what might be destroyed or not in Gaza, and then only a few months later, this is the after. So the brighter the red and the brighter the green, the greater the destruction. And as we know, it's just devastating for the people, but it's also devastating for their cultural identity too, and that is deliberate. There is no question that archaeological sites that represent Palestinian culture have been destroyed, not just in Gaza, but the West Bank too. And there isn't time to go into detail of the other projects that are working that have been a spin-off from the Amina project, but there's the Maria project, the maritime endangered archaeology of the Middle Eastern areas, run through Southampton University, but do have a look at that. And then also in the mapping of endangered archaeological sites and monuments, this is a project based in Cambridge University looking at sub-Saharan Africa. Again, fascinating work that's going on, and really important work doing it in areas that haven't been done before. And so what about the future? Well, I've put training, to misquote a former Prime Minister. But if we're not able to train the next generation, then the ability to interpret our photographs, and for me that's the most important part. It's great fun, obviously, isn't it, flying around in helicopters or planes taking pictures, but it's the interpretation that counts. So we've got to train people in that technique of interpreting what it is we're looking at, so that future generations can use that material and have some understanding. So in terms of the conclusions, I think that it's really four main ones: that there are increasing threats to sites in the Middle East, urban expansion, agriculture, climate change, and particularly in the Middle East conflict. One of the issues is there's a lack of resources, and that's a lack of resources at every level. But every department of antiquities, probably in the world, but especially in the Middle East, are under-resourced and underfunded. There's an additional problem which we've been aware of in Europe and Britain for a long time, which is often the training is excavation focused. So I've put here excavation focus in education at the tertiary level, and so there's a real need to try and redress that balance, which is archaeology is more than excavation, and it is about interpretation and landscape approach, which we're also familiar with, and finally the need for training. So unless we're going to do training, then I just don't think we're fulfilling our duties. So the aerial archaeology in Jordan project is morphing into a training and really a training project for remote sensing and aerial archaeology in the Middle East. And the funding we've got this year from the Society of Antiquaries is to do just that in Jordan and Oman. And we're applying for other sources as well. So I may well be knocking on some of your doors saying, can you come out and help us with some training? But the Endangered Archaeology projects and those other projects do employ very specialised people, so we're going to be using them too. And then hot off the press, in honour of David Kennedy, Reframing the Desert Frontier, Studies in the Ancient Near East and North Arabia in honour of David Kennedy. This has just come out from Sydney University Press, so I thoroughly recommend it because it helps to summarise a lot of the work that David's done, and David was a pioneer in so much of satellite interpretation and the study of the Middle East, the Levant, so I thoroughly recommend that. So again, apologies I'm not there with you, purely for personal circumstances and building work, having moved house. The builders were supposed to start in October and they started in July, so we've got an awful lot of clearing up to do. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and hopefully see you next year. Thank you very much.